Videos like these are made possible by viewers like you, who support the channel through Patreon, channel memberships, and stream donations. And don't forget to check out the Bad Weapon Rehabilitation servers at www.badweaponrehab.tf. Check the links in the description for more information, and let's get into the video. I always like to give Heavy and Demoman players a hard time because they fight over whether or not their side-grade primaries that are nearly identical to stock outside of a few minor tweaks end up outclassing those stock weapons. Well, soldiers have zero room to talk there because the amount of people who swear by the minuscule differences that the original has to offer far outnumber the people who can actually afford a strange one. But I'll give soldiers this: at least the other stock rocket launcher reskin doesn't get the same treatment. The Cow Mangler. Yep, it's a rocket launcher. Okay, I'll try a little bit harder than that. The Cow Mangler is a weapon that is so ridiculously similar to the stock rocket launcher in almost every way that the only things worth discussing about it are the minute differences that it does offer, and what can generously be called the controversy surrounding its balance state. The Cow Mangler is identical to the stock rocket launcher in almost every way, but it has an infinite ammo pool, it deals only 20% damage to buildings, it deals mini crits whenever it would normally deal critical hits, and right-clicking while you have all 4 shots loaded will consume all of those shots at once and fire a projectile that deals guaranteed mini crits to whoever it hits, lights those enemies on fire, and temporarily disables any buildings it hits for a few seconds. Now that sounds like quite a bit, but when it comes down to how you play soldier, it really doesn't amount to all that much being different outside of dealing with engineers, which is where the Cow Mangler really starts to falter. Let's break this down and start by talking about the Cow Mangler's most attractive feature, the super shot. Let's not mince words here. Hitting one of these shots is so satisfying. Especially when you land a shot on a crowd of people and have them all screaming and running away on low health as they burn to death. It's like poetry. But I think this is a case of the lows defining the highs, which is to say this is an extremely polarizing all or nothing mechanic. Let's start with the good. Dealing a guaranteed mini crit on a rocket launcher with a damage over time effect on top of that is extremely rewarding. It essentially turns each one of these super shots into a light class deleter no matter the range. Being able to inflict afterburn on enemies can also be helpful for forcing retreats, charging up a banner you might be using, or in niche situations, even helping out a friendly pyro by giving them a free flare combo. Of course, in very niche situations, you're helping the enemy team's man melter pyro, but let's be real, no one's equipping the man melter because the enemy soldier is using the goddamn Cow Mangler. That's not a real downside. What is a real downside is the cost of firing this super shot. You need to slow yourself down to an absolute crawl for about 3 seconds before you let this thing fly, and it consumes all 4 of your loaded shots. Now, this means you can't use the super shot for any kind of quick reaction. You need to be proactive, or more accurately, prophetic, in order to get any kind of use out of it. It also means you're incredibly vulnerable while you're charging up, especially to snipers who have an extremely easy time taking you out before the shot can even go off. You can't do anything about it either. There's no canceling out of the shot once you commit to it. So if you see a sniper while you're aiming your shot, all you can do is aim at him, duck sporadically, and pray. And of course, let's not pretend that a stationary target who's focused entirely on one point on his screen is only vulnerable to snipers. Now, the real bastard of all this is that your vulnerability to snipers is made even worse by the cost of the super shot, all 4 of your loaded rockets. While guaranteed mini crits are very powerful, the sheer amount of time you spend totally vulnerable before and after firing the super shot makes this a purely long range option. This isn't so bad since you don't have to deal with damage fall off thanks to the mini crit, but it means you'll rarely be able to take advantage of damage ramp up either, which would only serve to increase the amount of targets you can realistically kill with a single shot and afterburn. Even then, if you did manage to take advantage of the ramp up, you'd be at higher risk of lighting yourself on fire in the process with your own super shot. And no, the Man Melter can't farm crits off of you doing this. I'm sorry, I tried that back in the Man Melter video and it didn't work. This also means that the only way you can effectively use the super shot is by putting yourself in that sniper vulnerable position. You're effectively sharing a sight line that he can take way better advantage of than you, unless there's either not a sniper at all, or you find a really sneaky spot that you'll just immediately give away as soon as you fire your shot, so you better make it count. The biggest exception to this is in highly defensive situations where you're just spamming shots down in a choke you know enemies are going to come through, especially at high ground. But at that point, you're kind of just praying for an enemy to walk into your crosshairs at exactly the right moment. But back to the cost, all 4 of your rockets for potentially one-shotting a light class at range is honestly just not all that worth it, since you can simply shoot 2 rockets at most classes in the game to kill them at close range. In other words, by not taking advantage of what is easily the most interesting feature of the Cow Mangler, and just playing like a normal soldier using the regular rocket launcher, you manage to outclass this feature dramatically in the vast majority of situations. But this ends up creating a sort of weird psychological effect, where people who use the Cow Mangler generally feel like they have to use the super shot, otherwise why even equip it in the first place? It's the defining feature of the weapon after all. And so a lot of Cow Mangler soldiers you'll see will just be hiding around a corner, peeking out every time their super shot is ready, and just kind of doing that over and over and over again. They don't treat the super shot as this situational tool of destruction that can send an entire group of enemies running for the hills. They treat it as literally the only thing to use the weapon for. And it can also be kind of annoying. It's like fighting a slower, corner-peeking huntsman sniper, which is to say still not very fun, even if it's not the most effective. But even if a Cow Mangler soldier is trying this, the easiest means of shutting him down is by existing in the vicinity of the Cow Mangler's arch nemesis, the engineer and his sentry gun. This is the primary reason that the Cow Mangler sees as little use as it does in casual settings, because engineers in casual are extremely common, and soldiers who don't shoot rolls of toilet paper at their enemies are used to being able to take down sentries pretty easily as long as the engineer isn't turtling too hard. It can already feel like a bit of a losing proposition when you're trying to take down a sentry that's actively being turtled with most rocket launchers. With the Cow Mangler, you may as well not even bother shooting at a mini sentry. Now the super shot does have the ability to temporarily disable sentries. In fact, not just sentries, but all buildings, including dispensers and teleporters. This doesn't seem all that bad, but in order to pull this off, you need to be in a position where you have a clear line of sight on the sentry, and it needs to be out of the sentry's range so you can stand totally still for a few seconds and not die to it, something that not every map in the game is going to offer you, especially from a position of safety from the rest of the enemy team. If it's around a corner on a particularly tight map, then you can hit it with the splash damage, but at that point the sentry is vulnerable to all types of splash damage, and the same is true for a sentry that you have a long range line of sight on. See the problem? I feel like this mechanic exists less as a genuine replacement for taking down sentries or doing lots of damage to them quickly, and more like it's throwing a bone to the people who use the unlock in the first place so they don't feel totally useless against them. It gives you more of a supportive role, but just how useful is this role to begin with? Well, disabling a sentry will prevent it from firing, but it does nothing to stop the inherent problem, which is the dingus behind it who loves the sound of his wrench making contact with metal. Maybe if you hit a really clean shot such that it hits the engineer and disables his sentry at the same time, well, that probably still won't matter because he'll almost certainly be right next to a dispenser, but in that situation, you might be able to get him to abandon his post for just a little while to save his own life, or if you're very lucky, kill him outright, and then let your team walk in to deal with the sentry problem while it's down, assuming they realize the sentry is even there to begin with, since the fact that you're disabling the sentry may give some of your teammates the impression that a sentry outside of the typical line of sight may not exist at all. Seeing a Cow Mangler soldier fire off his super shot isn't indication enough that he's disabling a building. It's indication that the Cow Mangler soldier is doing the one thing the Cow Mangler can do that the other rocket launchers can't, which isn't exactly the best signal that there's a sentry present. I think if you're communicating with your team over voice chat, then the sentry disabling function might be a bit more useful. But even then, that's so much more effort than just two-tapping it with a direct hit, and then one-tapping the engineer for good measure. Speaking of one-taps, let's talk critical hits. Soldier is easily one of the strongest classes in the game to use the Kritzkrieg charge on, only rivaled by Heavy and Demoman, and the Cow Mangler turns this raw destructive power into basically a glorified buff banner charge. Not only is the Cow Mangler incapable of dealing random crits at all, but if you're crit boosted by a medic using the Kritzkrieg, or capping on CTF, or humiliation during the end of the round, or a crits canteen and MVM, you will instead only deal mini crits. It's basically the reverse of the stat that makes the Bushwhacker so infuriating. Originally, you couldn't crit boost the Cow Mangler at all. If you tried, it wouldn't do anything. But in Jungle Inferno, they buffed it and gave it this stat. I see this as kind of the same thing as the Sentry disabling Super Shot. It's throwing you a bone for using the Cow Mangler by making it so you're not completely fucking over your crits medic, should he have no other choice but to Uber you. It's also probably helpful for newer players who might not realize that their Kritzkrieg isn't working for some reason. Ultimately, it's really more of a buff for the medic than it is for the soldier himself. I'm not entirely sure why this stat even exists, to be completely honest. No random crits I understand completely, but most weapons in the game that give you some kind of guaranteed crit or mini crit effect will balance that out by giving you no random crits, so that way you're not just constantly shitting out extra damage. You have to follow the conditions of your crit effect. It would be kind of bullshit to be facing off against the Frontier Justice Engineer and see that he's finally run out of crits, only for you to get blasted in the face by a random one anyway. But hey, that's just kind of bullshit no matter what shotgun he's using, so ugh. But being unable to get the benefits of full critical hits at all is honestly just kind of bizarre to me. Maybe it's because of the laser projectile? Like they couldn't figure out how to make it look like it's crit boosted and also not a super shot? But then the lasers for the Thompson and the Bison look the same even when they're critical hits too, and both of those weapons can random crit. Maybe that just has to do with how much more powerful crit rockets are compared to crit Thompson or Bison shots? I don't know. Honestly, even with the existence of the super shots, I don't think the Cow Mangler would instantly rise to the top of the metagame if it were to be crit boostable. I could see it arguably being the strongest defensive rocket launcher, while one of the weaker ones offensively if that were the case, but I think that would also give it a pretty good niche, you know? As it stands, I'd argue the Cow Mangler is still at its best in more defensive situations, especially when paired with a banner of some kind to help your team in a more supportive role. You can avoid engineers more frequently on defense, and it's the situation you're most likely to get use out of your super shots, but the fact that the Kritzkrieg is most frequently run on defense does put a bit of a dent in this specialization. I also enjoy running it with a shotgun to help cover both of these weaknesses, since I can still at least deal critical shotgun damage during an emergency crit charge, and also deal actual damage to buildings myself after I disable them, which isn't amazing, but it helps to cover the weakness at least a little bit. But let's talk about the one stat that gives it its actual niche. The most controversial stat of them all. A stat so diabolical, so infamous, that it's resulted in this weapon being banned from Las Vegas for card counting. The infinite ammo pool. It makes spamming basically free, so it's pretty good in sixes.
To the pits of Tartarus with thee.
I'm always confused on whether or not I should even talk about competitive in my videos. Sometimes people get upset with me that I don't mention a weapon's effectiveness in comp, mostly because they're upset that I'm not confirming their bias on a particular weapon's balance state. Other times people wonder why the hell I even bring it up in the first place because compies ruined the game or whatever axe it is they're grinding this week. But in the case of the Cow Mangler, it's literally one of the only points of interest when talking about the weapon, so fuck it, I'm talking about competitive. So it's important to mention that there's a few different leagues of competitive TF2, and they all have their own rule set. Of the 4 major leagues, the Cow Mangler is banned in 6v6 competitive in 3 leagues. But one of those is the European League, and their whitelist is basically a joke, so 2 leagues that I'll take seriously. Wait, hold on, Oz Fortress banned the lock and load. Alright, 1 league I'll take seriously. Better watch your asses, RGL. So the main reason that the Cow Mangler is selectively banned is the fact that you have a bottomless pool of ammo to pull from at all times. In casual, this honestly doesn't make all that much of a difference, especially on game modes like Payload, where on offense you have a cart giving you loads of ammo, and on defense you're very likely to have a nest or at least some kind of holding point to do the same thing. The biggest benefit is, once again, not really to the soldier himself, but to your team's engineers, who no longer have to worry about a soldier stealing their ammo pack after he rocket jumps over to the health pack right next to it. The only real buff the soldier here gets is not getting called racial slurs by his own team's engineer. On a weapon that's full of nothing stats, I'd argue in casual this one is the least impactful of them all. In competitive, this matters a lot more since there will be points while waiting for advantage to make a push where all the soldier can do is hang back and spam shots unless they want to make some kind of sacrifice play. And making this spam free means they can do this for as long as they need to without needing to worry about ammo management. The other big thing is that the downsides really don't matter nearly as much. Unlike in casual, where it's every man for himself and you might be the only one with a brain cell to rub together to know what an engineer nest is and how to take it down, in competitive, you're always going to have another soldier and a demo man who's going to be able to take down any sentry you see. And even though your medic is much more likely to run Uber as opposed to crits in the first place, in the event that he does decide to go crits, he has 4 other competent people that you're all in direct communication with that he can give that same charge to. The downsides in competitive simply don't matter very much, so it's pretty much all upsides in Cow Mangler Town. You can even use that charge shot as much as you want in the situations that call for it, which aren't frequent but they do still exist, and you might just get a lucky spam shot kill on the medic. All of this compiled together has resulted in the Cow Mangler selective ban. But is it totally justified? I'm not the most experienced when it comes to the competitive scene, but if you ask me, I'd honestly have to say no. I mean, sure, the downsides don't matter all that much, but I don't think the upsides are so amazing that they instantly turn it into an overpowered meta centralizer either. It's just that, yeah, spamming is a lot easier now, and there's less snipers than engineers to worry about, so super shots are more viable. You can't do any of the crazy shit you can do with the Beggar's Bazooka, which is seeing a lot more use in comp lately, and the stock rocket launcher is ultimately going to be more reliable in all situations. Sure, you, as the soldier, don't have to think about ammo management while spamming, but your crits medic doesn't have to worry about weapon management or which soldier he's charging if they're both just using stock. In other words, I think this is a side grade. This is a weapon that was really borderline when it came to being banned or illegal for a long time, and the funny thing is, it was Valve who eventually pushed it into the territory it's in now, where it's mostly banned by continually buffing it in the updates that people like to bitch about being the most competitively oriented. And I just think that's really funny. How dare those damn comp players ruin the game by twisting Valve's arm until they buffed the Cow Mangler so they could ban it. Truly, these people are worse than Hitler. And to wake up all the people who fell asleep because I started talking about competitive, let's talk about MVM next. Yeah, I'm covering all my bases here. I'm not risking the need to talk about this weapon again when there's still some more interesting ones I can cover. Unless the MVM update buffs it, in which case, fuck. Now this is where the infinite ammo pool really comes in handy. Move over, compies. This bad boy saves you a whopping 750 credits every single tour. Sounds pretty great, right? Sort of. I mean, yes, you do get to save credits on ammo capacity, but it's at the cost of your effectiveness using crits, which are absolutely the meta in MVM, unlike in comp or even in casual. Even if your medic isn't using the crits Krieg and is using the vaccinator or something, he still has crit canteens. And so do you, meaning you'll likely be screwing yourself out of loads of extra damage, and on top of this, your team is likely to only have one soldier on it. That's you, buddy. And let's talk about the biggest downside, which is the super shot. Unfortunately, the super shot doesn't just take 4 rockets. It takes your entire pool of loaded rockets, and it only works when you're fully loaded. This means that when you buy clip size upgrades, you're only further increasing the opportunity cost of your super shot by making it take even more ammo to fire and more time to reload. And even the firing speed upgrade doesn't make it go off any faster, so it still takes forever. And that's time you could be spending shooting entire volleys of high damage rockets. It might be worth it if you choose to forego purchasing clip size upgrades entirely and focus on damage and reload speed, but at that point you'll not only be dishing out so much damage that you can basically shit out buff banner charges, but you're also just trading the cost of buying one upgrade for either not purchasing another way more useful one, or not using the biggest draw of the weapon. In other words, just using it like you would the stock rocket launcher. And honestly, that's kind of just the story with the Cow Mangler in general. It's a lot of stats and a lot of text that don't really play very nicely with each other, but don't really hinder you all that much from just playing normal soldier. But unless you're one of the few and proud crazy sons of bitches who owns a painted one of these things, or if you're short on keys and really want a strange professional killstreak soldier primary that actually deals damage, it can feel a little hard to justify using it over stock. Or even something like the direct hit or black box. Or the original, which I know soldier mains will still argue is more distinct from stock than this thing. Oh, but it makes pogo so much easier! Yeah, why don't you pogo on this dick? Same.
They kicked their only good player.
Well, you sound like the fucking orphan of Kos there.
No, that's what a cat sounds like.
Oh, I thought it was the orphan of Kos from Bloodborne.
I'm gonna put my cat on
No,
the
no,
mic.
no, no, no. That was my cat impression.
Oh.
Oh, you fucked with the wrong black box. Oh, you son of a nutcracker.
You fucked with the
freaking
wrong
diarrhea.
bull.
You called me a what? Did you just call me a what, Zenith?
What?
You just called me a cracker.
Oh my god.
No, I said son of a nutcracker.
I read between the lines.
That's a
I
dog
remember-
whistle.
Okay, no, that is like a completely
a
different
dog
It's
sentence.
a dog
actually.
whistle,
It's
Zenith.
a completely different sentence, actually, if you think about it, because I said son of a nutcracker.
No, you called him a cracker.
I can
Son of a
recognize a
bitch.
dog whistle when I see one.
You're
I'm not
calling
calling
him
you
a
a-
cracker
I'm
by
not
calling
calling
him a son of a
I'm not
nutcracker.
calling him a crack. Okay, you're a fucking cracker bitch.
Whoa, mask off
Dude, you just
moment.
said dog
Mask
whistle,
off
man.
Cracker
moment.
bitch. I hate white people.